Hello, everyone, and welcome in to all beautiful souls out there. It's your favorite grief and burnout coach, Princess Millens, and you're listening to the Restore My Soul podcast, the podcast that helps women push through grief and burnout so that they can experience health in every aspect of life. In this space, you will hear personal stories, practical information, and expertise from myself, along with my special guest. We do not offer medical advice, but women can learn to heal by creating a mindset to grow past their grief using biblical principles. No matter if the loss is from death or divorce, there is hope for restoration. So let's push through grief together, one episode at a time. I have a special guest today, the founder and CEO of the CEO Moms Club, Wilda Jean, and I have had the pleasure of working with her and her magnificent way of just helping mothers to transform to a CEO mindset. When I learned of her past struggles with postpartum depression, I knew that I had to get her on the podcast to share about this, because this topic is so underserved, and oftentimes mothers don't know what's happening and or have the language to just articulate how they feel with postpartum depression, as I have experienced in my own life. So today we're going to have a conversation about how this thing called postpartum depression can show up in our life and some things we can do to help ourselves during this difficult season in our life. Let's go. So I want to welcome my special guest today, Wilda Jean, to the podcast. She is a prestigious business coach and strategist who is notorious for her distinctive combination of using spiritual well-being and personal development and strategy to help promising startup businesses learn how to create profitable online businesses. She is dedicated to her God-given purpose to work with mothers and the founder of the CEO Moms Club. And I have to add that she has a genuine and caring and inspiring spirit, and she has been that personally to me. And so I'm just honored that you are here, Wilda, and know that you have a lot to offer around this subject of moms and struggles with grief and burnout. So let's get right to it. I know that you have a personal testimony in dealing with postpartum depression. And so that's kind of what this podcast is centered around. How do we overcome these things? Can you give us some insight on what this is and how did you overcome it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. And you are very near and dear to my heart. And so postpartum depression is real, and it is not something that we talk about very often. And it is something we should talk about. And so I remember being in college, pregnant with my firstborn son. I was in my junior year of college when I found out that I was pregnant with him. And it was a very, very interesting time period. You know, I tried to tell my parents like probably 3 months. I told myself I was gonna tell my parents 3 months after. So that way, I'm here now. What can you say, right? And so I went through the journey, and some traumatic things happened to me, like the father of my children actually was incarcerated when I was about 8.5 months pregnant. And this was both of our first children. So it was a very traumatic experience, and my blood pressure started to go up. I became preeclamptic. Excuse me. And so I was about 9 centimeters dilated. And my doctor said, okay, In about 30 minutes, it's going to be time for you to push. And I said, okay, cool. I'm excited, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know what you're going through because, or what you went through, because I had a personal story about that too. But I'm gonna let you go ahead and finish your story, and I'll come back in.
Okay, sorry about that. So I was ready. I'm like, my son is about to be here. I'm excited. My blood pressure goes back up, his blood pressure goes back up, and now we are being rushed into the emergency room. I'm about to have an emergency C-section. I remember my body trembling
Wow.
on the operating table, and they don't tell you that that's a common symptom. So I was scared. I'm like, how am I shaking? And you guys are about to cut me open. Like, does this not affect the surgery itself? And they just acted like it wasn't a big deal. So I went through that. It was hard. I cried many nights, just for the fact that, like, it took me a while longer to get my son at night when he would cry. And when I would be by myself, I would have to still get up and feed him, and I would cry like, wow, this is really hard. I want to get to him quicker, especially being your firstborn. You're more sensitive to, your child's needs and stuff like that. So, God told me to continue to go to school. I was about 7 or 8 hours away from home. So I went back to school. God told me that I was going to graduate on time. I went back. He paid my bills. He got my son into school within the first 3 months of him being born for free through my school. And everything continued to align up. But I couldn't deal with those things at the time because I was breastfeeding. I was, still trying to make sure I'm okay for my son, continuing school, working, and all of these things. So I really didn't realize that I was going through postpartum depression until I had my daughter and I got into therapy. And that's when I realized that a lot of the things that I was doing, ignoring my household duties, not going to, events that would help me with personal development. I would coupon. So I would be gone all day couponing to save money, right? But then I wouldn't cook. I wouldn't clean. I was ignoring the things that I should have been doing at home for the
Wow.
sake of, well, I'm saving my family money and it makes sense. But I was using those things to escape from my responsibilities and what my life had become. And so once I realized that, that was like probably the beginning of me learning about postpartum depression and how to combat it.
Wow, that's a powerful testimony. And like I said before, I really have a personal testimony too, because, and I know some of what you felt, because my first child, it wasn't a C-section, but it was a natural birth, but I didn't have any pain medication. So I felt every push, every pain, every labor of my first child. But it began to start when I brought her home. So when I brought her home, it was a fear. I had a fear that something would happen to her. I had um a fear, some type of fear that something would happen to her. I was always worried about her well-being, her welfare. I think I was hovering. I would never let her out of my sight. And I did not know, because I was about 24 years old, and I didn't know, I didn't have any language. I didn't even know what postpartum depression was. And I did not have language to articulate to anyone what I was going through. And I suffered through that with no counseling. Thank God you were able to identify and go to therapy and realize this is what was going on with you. So it's a tough journey, right? And it sometimes it paralyzes even different areas of our life. We think it just stays with the baby, or it stays with the fear of the losing the baby, or whatever it is. We think that's fear, but it filters out into other areas of our life, I believe. Now, we all mothers, and some of us are business owners. And even if we're not business owners, we have a job and we're a co-worker, we have a responsibility as an employee. How does postpartum depression normally affects that aspect of our lives in terms of motherhood and being able to just function in your business or even as an employee?
That's actually a really great question. And I would say for me, it was pretty interesting because it took me a while to balance or rather navigate either being working a 9 to 5 and being a mother versus owning a business and navigating motherhood. But what I will say is that I overcompensated because when I was going through my symptoms of postpartum depression, I was told that I'm just being lazy and basically to
Wow.
disregard what I had felt and what those symptoms were because I'm like, oh, well, I don't feel like those symptoms were ideal for my situation. However, I understand the source of what caused me to behave that way. And so now I have to unlearn those behaviors and create better behaviors and habits. So I overcompensated. So now I'm like motivated, like I want to do this business stuff, like I'm excited, I'm getting clients. So now I'm waking up business. I'm breastfeeding business. I'm cooking, I got my laptop and I'm doing business. Like, so now I'm literally consumed with my business and like I put my kids to sleep, I'm back in business mode. I'm, staying up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm working on my business. So then I ended up still creating an unhealthy habit and lifestyle for myself because I was trying to prove to all of those people that, hey, I'm not those symptoms. I'm more than what you said. I'm not lazy. I just was going through a season. I was going through a period of time. And now that I have the help and I've identified that, now I'm moving into a better direction. But then I had to set boundaries like, okay, this is good that you're moving forward. This is good that you're motivated and that you're encouraged and that you are, walking in your full capability. However, you have to set healthy boundaries for yourself. You have to still set that time to be able to spend with your kids. You have to be able to spend with yourself and implement self-care and make sure that you're good because the honest truth is whether you work a 9 to 5 or you own a business as a mother, you have to be able to implement self-care for you to show up 100% for your kids because if you can't show up for yourself, you're not going to be able to show up for your kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's something to be said about overcompensating. And I think we as women we do that a lot more than we think and that we probably give credit to. And a lot of times when we're going through grief, when we were struggling mentally and emotionally, we start to overcompensate or we start doing other things just like you said. You started clipping coupons and things like that. I think I started researching everything. I researched trying to see what was going on. And so we overcompensate in what we think are good behaviors, but they're in some ways toxic because it brings you back, it brings you farther away from having or realizing the need for the help that you need, and absolutely just reaching out to the people that you need. So it's a word about just being overcompensating in all of this. But this is good information because I believe that as mothers, as business owners, we have to have a mindset, and I know that's your area. We have to have a great mindset to be able to push through and navigate those things that we need in order to be successful. And a lot of things that hinders us like postpartum depression or any other type of depression, we see that it hinders different areas of our life, and sometimes it comes unaware, and we don't realize it until it's too late. Isn't that right? So um just I want to stay right there in the area of overcompensating and doing those behaviors that we don't normally associate as being an escape from the reality or an escape from the fear that's created around whatever the grief point is or whatever the depression point is. So, talk a little bit more about overcompensating and how can someone identify that they are overcompensating in the area, and it really is a mask for escaping what you're going through or what you need to face.
That's a great question. So I would say that personal development has become very vital to me. And so I understand more now that a lot of the things that I lacked as a adolescent affected me as an adult and as a mother. So for example, I had poor time management skills as an adolescent, and my my family, my upbringing, we just all have poor time management. And so, people always say like, we're gonna come on Black people time, right? That's so common to hear. And so it's like, okay, that sounds funny until it's
Yeah.
not funny, until you realize that you're showing up late to opportunities, or you're showing up late to your children's events and things like that. And it's not healthy and it's not okay. And so one of the ways that I learned to not overcompensate is to actually create a schedule. And it probably sounds very simple, but it is life-changing. It can be life-changing if you allow it to be, because now that I can see where I want my time to go, I can identify, well, where has my time been going before? So I'm not going to sit for 5 hours working on one project, every single day. I have to be mindful of how I delegate my time to ensure that the projects that I do have to get done are done in a timely manner. I don't have to procrastinate because I already plan to break this down a week in advance, so that way it's digestible and it's able to be done in a timely manner. And then going back to our kids, I need to make time for my kids. So I have specific times in my day where this is just undivided time and attention for my kids. And I remember like one day God told me like, well, you're getting frustrated that your kids are like wanting to play with you and talk to you while you're on a Zoom call with a client or in class or something like that. But did you make time for them today? Like dedicated
Oh,
a
wow.
specific time to play or talk or read a book with them? So how can I really be upset or frustrated that they're literally just asking me for my time? And at the end of the day, we mostly start our businesses as parents to have more time for our kids, to have the financial freedom for our kids. So now I'm looking at them like, mommy's got to work. Mommy's trying to get this done for you. Well, then I need to make time for them. And so creating a schedule and setting the boundaries. I don't talk to clients at this time. I don't work on business at this time. I'm going to sit down and eat with my kids. I'm going
That's
to have a family day for me and my kids. Like those things are crucial in my schedule, and those boundaries help me to allow the schedule to continue to flow. And so that helped me a lot with overcompensating, because I'm more mindful of where I'm putting my time and when I'm putting that time into those specific areas.
Oh, wow, that is so good. That is so good, and it brings back to my remembrance of a lot of things that we learn even in childhood. You're right. We have to unlearn those things because it does not serve us when we get older, or even when we're going through something, because some of those things, I think we go back to the familiar, and sometimes the familiar is not a productive or effective way to live. And even when our bodies and our minds know that something is not right, and I'm overcompensating, but we don't have the strategies already in place to know and to do the things that is going to serve us in that moment. So that's a great, I think we're twins, because I had the same experience with time management, and it was like a thing, as far as, hey, if you're not on time, it's all right, but I think when we go through grief and depression, some of those negative behaviors, they start to illuminate and they start to intensify, because we go back to the familiar, and because we this is how we've done it. And I think the brain is formulated to always go back to our comfort zone and always go back to the familiar, even if it's not serving the purpose that it needs to serve. So I really thank you for that insight on that, because a lot of people, I think we can overthink things as well. And so just the basics of setting a schedule and having boundaries is a key step into even going to the overcompensating and not dragging yourself through the things that you didn't even need to experience, right? So we're going to kind of end this out. I want you to give a final word to the audience. What do you want them to know as we close this segment? What do you think that they need to know in the area of anything that we've talked about today, or something that will encourage them in their journey of emotional healing?
Absolutely. So what I would say is that I want you to understand that when it comes to your mental health, just because you're a believer doesn't mean that you won't ever go through anything related to mental health, whether it's anxiety, postpartum depression, or anything like that. And I remember at one point thinking that you shouldn't claim those things, right? Um, However, I'm not saying to claim them, but they can happen to the best of us. And so I will say that God definitely is the number one source that did get me through getting the help that I needed. But I also went to therapy as well. So it's okay to do both. It's okay to go to God, and it's okay to also go to therapy as well. Just surround yourself by people that will support you, that will understand and love on you in your time, season, or moment of, whatever it is that you're going through. Know that you're not alone. You can find a community that will support you. There are a lot of resources out here to help you get through those seasons, and know that you are loved, you are appreciated, and it is okay to not be okay. And so, if at any moment in time, if you are contemplating, harming yourself or harming somebody else, please seek help. Find someone that you can talk to about that. I know that in those darker moments of my life, I contemplated those type of things. And I personally wanted it to do those things for attention, not necessarily like because I really wanted to hurt myself.
Yeah.
So I know that it's easy to get to that point, and we want you here. We need you here. Your kids, your family, they need you here. So get the help that you need, and know that darkness does come before dawn, and that it will get better.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Darkness comes before dawn. I love that statement. So I just want to thank you so much, Wilda, for being here as a guest on the Restore My Soul podcast. And one more thing before we end this segment, just tell the people how that they can contact you and connect with you further.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for anybody that needs any coaching, mindset, or business coaching services, you can follow me at Wilda the CEO. And then if you are a mom, you can join our community and also take advantage of our mindset and business coaching services. And that will be at the CEO Moms Club on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Wilda, for being here. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.
Hey, be sure to check out my book, It's Okay to Cry Kids by Princess Millens, on Amazon as a paperback or a Kindle ebook, or you can visit my website at blessedandbeautifulinternational.com. It was very important to me always to include the children, our youth, in the grieving process and be attentive to what they need. And I wrote this fictional story to help kids be able to process what's going on when they grieve. So be sure to check it out. Let me encourage you today. What I've learned about postpartum depression is that it shows up as fear and overwhelm. And many times we don't even know what the root cause is initially. And I know that we always say in the scripture that God did not give us the spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. But to take it a step further, it is all centered by our love. I don't mean the kind of love that we often see in this world, but God's love, the true agape love that is unconditional and without fear. Well, how do I know this? It's because First John chapter 4 and 18, it says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. You see, fear involves torment. And this is a key element that takes place when we experience postpartum depression. And when we get afraid, it's time to check our love. Well, one may say that I love my children like mothers are supposed to love. So, how does that bring fear? But we also must love God with that same energy, that same intensity, because we love the people, places, and things more than the God who gave them to us. And then we open the door to fear of losing them. God's love brings no torment and gives us peace we need to raise our children in a healthy way. So I declare that you walk in God's spirit of power, love, and a sound mind, and are released from the bondage of fear and the overwhelming torment that it brings, and that you continue to live in God's perfect peace and love that leads to the fullness of joy. To all the mothers out there and even the aspiring mothers, I hope that this episode gave some clarity about postpartum depression, but also inspired you that no matter if you or someone you know is experiencing this, it's something that you face, but you can break free from it. And just like any level of grief, postpartum depression has many faces and can show up differently for all of us. And you heard that in this episode. But know this, you don't have to succumb to the fear, to the grief, or the torment. You are a great mother. I just know it. So just start right there in believing that you are. Now go hug those babies. With this, we have come to the end of today's episode, and I hope you had a great time listening. I want to thank you all for joining me right here every Friday at 6 p.m. So be sure to leave your reviews and tell me what struck you most about this episode. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss out on any new releases. Also, please just share this episode and this podcast with as many people as you can so that they can join in on this Restore My Soul movement. And then lastly, I invite you to follow me, Princess Millens, on all social media channels. Well, that's my time, and I will see you in the next episode.